Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, guys. Hi, kids. Hi, Eden. Hi, Mishu. Hi, Sumin. Um, sorry, had to say hi to the kids. Thank you all for staying back. I love that you're still with us and hope you had a good lunch. The food was wonderful. Um, I would like to see just a quick show of hands. How many of you are student visas? One student. Oh, yay. Thank you for coming. Welcome. This is all for you. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna start like our wonderful Jessica mentioned. I am an immigration attorney, and I'm going to be presenting specifically about student visas, how to maintain your status, what's going to affect your status, pathways towards residency, and things to avoid so that you don't get into trouble. Because as you might know, F1 regulations are very strict and you're required to abide by the rules. So hopefully this presentation will give you some clue into what kind of things to expect and what to do, what not to do. Okay. Okay. So the first thing that I would like to start with is by talking about maintenance of status. So you're here on a student visa and you're required to maintain your status. Most of you probably already know what that entails, but just briefly, it is about taking a full course of study, first of all. You have to maintain at least 12 credits, and if you are doing a master's program, it's a little bit less, but you do have to maintain a full course load. And I do get questions about, taking a reduced course load. You are allowed to do that, but you're not allowed to reduce it by not less than six credits, so at least half of your total credit requirements. And I would also like to stress the importance of documentation throughout this presentation, because when you're busy with classes, you're not really thinking about, what kind of documentation would I need if I get in trouble. But so I would like to give you a few pointers on the things that you should keep in mind if these issues come up later, okay? The other thing that I would definitely want to mention is don't work without authorization, okay? Do not at all. Can't stress that enough. Do not work without authorization. Okay. You will violate the status if you work without authorization. And of course, go to school, take all the classes you need to take, and get good grades. I mean, if your grade falls below the required, that you're required to maintain, like if you withdraw a class, you could be out of status because that would fall below the 12 credits. If you fail a class, that's also going to violate your status. So all of those things are going to be extremely important for you to keep in mind, okay? And I am going to talk a little bit about what happens when your service is terminated, or what to do in that case, like how to reinstate your status and what is required. Okay. You must have noticed that when student visa is granted and when you come through the airport, when you make an entry, the I-94 that you get is, it has a notation which says DS, and that means duration of status. And what that means is that as long as you maintain your status, you will be allowed to stay here, right? And I just want to quickly also differentiate between what being out of status means and what having unlawful presence means. Those are two different things, okay? For students, it's very different because you're granted duration of status when you come in. It's not like it's as compared to a tourist visa or any other type of visa where it's a date certain. You're supposed to come here and you're supposed to leave within a certain period of time. It's not like that for students. You're allowed to be here as long as you maintain your status, okay? So even if you lose your status for some reason, it's not necessary that you would also start to accrue unlawful presence, okay? Because if you have on a tourist visa and you overstay your tourist visa, you start to accrue unlawful presence, okay? Illegal presence in the US. But that's not the case for student visas. And just to quickly mention a 310 bar. So there is this very strict rule that, and it applies to all types of non-immigrant visas, like HLO, like whichever one, is that if you overstay for more than 6 months and then leave, you will be barred from coming back in for 3 years, okay? If you have overstayed your visa for more than 1 year and then you leave, you will be barred from coming back in for 10 years. Okay, those are pretty harsh consequences of overstaying a visa. But in the case of a student, you will not accrue any unlawful presence until either the USCIS denies an application and tells you to go home, or an immigration judge does. Okay, so you have to have some type of an agency action before your unlawful presence begins, okay? And yeah, I mean, the next point is pretty self-explanatory. You know that you can change your status to any other non-immigrant visa, so you can go from F to H, you can go from F to L, you can go from F to E, like, whatever. And don't forget about your family members. If you have, spouses or kids who are on dependent visa, then they also need to change their status with you. Okay. So some of you might be thinking about maybe transferring to another university. That's completely allowed to do. And here are the rules. And you have to talk to your DSO, of course, and you have to get the authorization to transfer to another university. And just remember, like 5 months is like kind of the golden period where you're kind of okay. So if you start a new program at another school, you have to start the program within 5 months of transferring. Okay? You cannot stay home and not do anything. Because it's not automatic, because the status can always be terminated if you don't start your school, okay? And then, yeah, I mean, like you can transfer like in the middle of your program, after the completion of your program, or you can also transfer to another school after your OPT ends. And that, it does not necessarily require you to file any applications, you can just transfer, okay? But of course, you have to notify your DSO meaning your designated school official. If you're an F1 student, you know who I'm talking about, okay? You have to, and yeah, another thing about documentation, I know that most of you obviously everybody uses email, but email is a very good tool to document things. The things that you told your DSO, what the DSO told you, it's always a good idea to have that paper trail, if I may, available in case something happens. So you have a record of things, the record of things that you tried to do in order to maintain your status or something similar, okay? Okay, so let's talk about reinstatement, okay? Like I said before, for some reason, if you go out of status, if you fail a class, let's say, something happens, you fail a class, and your credits, the number of total credits fell below 12. Your service record could be terminated. Like if you don't do anything, if you fail to pay your tuition fees, your service record could be terminated. So in that case, if you take steps to cure that, then your status
can be reinstated, okay? So again, 5 months is like the magic period of time, okay? Anything beyond 5 months and you're kind of too late. You're kind of too late because the amount of things that you have to show in order to convince the USCIS that you tried to maintain your status, it just goes up. Okay? So you have to show more things. So you have to show exceptional circumstances. And it has its own definition. It can be anything. And you can talk to me about it if you have questions about that. So again, like, it's important to document things. Okay. Are you allowed to withdraw? Yes, you are. You are allowed to withdraw and you're allowed to go home. But you must, again, talk to your DSO, because if you don't talk to your DSO, there's no grace period. Okay? You have to leave immediately. But if you do talk to your DSO and then say for some reason you cannot pay the fees, or you cannot, the classes are too hard, you want to go back home, something happens, you want to withdraw from your classes, withdraw from the university, and just go back home, just talk to your DSO. That gives you 15 days additional time, like a grace period, for you to be able to wrap up your business and just leave without any consequences. And another cool thing about that is that if you do have to withdraw, and if you, let's say, if within the 5 months of you leaving, if you decide to come back, you can do it without a new I-20. Okay? You don't need a new I-20 necessarily, pay the service fee again, which is not cheap, in order to come back as a student visa. Okay. I think employment is a very hot topic among students. I'm sure you know that you're allowed to work on campus, right? You don't need any work authorization to do that. But the hours are limited. You cannot work more than 20 hours, and you cannot work the first year at all, right? If you're a first year student on F1 visa, you are not allowed to work at all, okay? And obviously you cannot work off campus. And then there is this, there is a situation that the USCIS allows, that the rules allow, where you're allowed to request a work authorization for severe economic hardship. Remember COVID, what happened during COVID? A lot of people were stuck here, they couldn't pay their fees, and there was a lot of life lost and very tragic things happening. So that is a prime example of when a lot of students were able to apply for work authorization and basically work during their school year, and they were able to pay for their fees and things like that. So that's a very good example of economic hardship. Okay, so OPT and CPT, optional practical training and curricular practical training. They're different, they're not the same, right? So there are very strict rules regarding timing, regarding talking to your DSO. It's very strict in terms of when you can apply for OPT. And one of the things is that you have to, so there is pre-completion OPT and there is post-completion OPT. Pre-completion is before your program ends. So you want to work and you want to work, you want to have a work authorization before before graduation, basically. That is also allowed. But if you're not a STEM major, a science, technology, engineering, mathematics, if you're not a STEM major, then you're limited to 12 months, okay? And if you do start your OPT before graduation, that time that you worked on OPT, it counts towards your total time, total 12 months, okay? And that's also true for STEM, okay, STEM majors. You're very restricted on the types of employment that you can get. You cannot be an accounting major and go work at a restaurant as a server on your OPT, okay? It has to be within, your major area of study,
And that's how it's written. I want to distinguish OPT and CPT. CPT is basically, CPT is part of your degree where you're actually required to gain practical knowledge in addition to your theoretical knowledge. And I want to talk a little bit quickly. Let me see. Yeah, I'll get to that in a little bit, but okay, so let me see. Okay. Like I said, timing is essential in terms of like when you want to apply for OPT. It's very, very simple. It's like you cannot apply earlier than 90 days before you finish your program, and you cannot apply later than 60 days after you finish your program. So that, and then like if you don't apply on time, if you don't apply the EAD on time, they're going to reject your application. Okay, and then like the whole thing is lost. You might have to go back. So very, very, the timing is very, very crucial. Okay. I already talked about all of this. Okay, yeah, so you do get optional practical training after end of a program, after you graduate. And then it's available to you again, like say if you are here completing your bachelor's degree, you're also allowed to have the same OPT after you finish your master's degree. But it may not be available if you go for a second master's. If you're going for a second master's, you get a second degree, but if it's the same level, then you may not get another OPT, okay? And yeah, if you transfer to another school during your OPT automatically terminates. The EAD automatically terminates, okay? And I don't know if you wanna like take a picture of this, slide, but there is a list of eligible programs for the STEM OPT extension. It's very comprehensive, and it sometimes includes things that you may not directly think is a STEM degree. Okay. So after you finish your OPT, you're either supposed to leave. So they do give you a 60-day grace period where you have to leave the country, or change into some other status, or do something else. Do something else to maintain your status. Okay. And if you are going for a STEM OPT extension, then you have to file for that extension before your 12-month regular OPT expires. You cannot do it afterwards. Okay? It has to be before it expires. Anytime that you're on OPT, you're required to, again, maintain contact with your DSO. If anything material changes in terms of your employment, in terms of your address, which is very, very important, in terms of your pay or anything else, or whatever the case is, you have to alert your DSOs. This is especially true for STEM because they have also very strict requirements. The employer even has very strict requirements on how they're supposed to be compensating STEM OPTs. Is that a question or a stretch? Sorry, talking to you. Okay. Okay, so what if you get laid off? If you have a good job, like you're making, like a good salary and like, working, but like something happens and you lose your employment, okay? Again, the OPT rules are very strict. You cannot have more than 90 days. Immediately start looking for another job because you are going to need it. If you cannot find another job, you might have to leave because you cannot overstay, right? Because after your date is, after your program date is complete, if you still have OPT, but if you lost a job and you cannot find another employment within 90 days, or transfer to another school, or change your status in some other way, it affects your status as a whole. Okay. So there's the 90-150 rule where you cannot be unemployed for longer than 90 days, which is 3 months, on a regular OPT, and you cannot have more than 150 days on a STEM OPT. Okay.
Can you travel? Yes, you can travel. You can travel on OPT, okay? But of course, you have to get the travel endorsement before you leave. Don't be out more than 5 months. Again, that's the magic period of time. And every single time you come in at the airport, you're subject to questioning by the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, because they have to verify that you maintained your status. They have to verify a lot of things, whether you committed any crimes, whether you got arrested for something, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. They have to re-evaluate everything, re-evaluate your record before they allow you into the country again. Okay, so make sure you have your I-134 if you have it, like it's the affidavit of support which shows you have a sponsor, or have enough. So you have to show the availability of funds also, okay, just like the first time. Okay. Just want to quickly mention. Yes, you're allowed to travel, but then like if you're, you can also, you don't need to go back to Nepal, like you don't need to go back to the home country. You can go to Mexico or Canada, but you can only be out for less than 30 days, okay? And they can revalidate you. Okay, so this is the fun part. What kind of employment options do you have as an F1 student? You are eligible for any type of employment, employment-based visa, or any type of employment-based non-immigrant visa. So there's a difference between an H1 and a permanent residency, of course, right? But you're allowed to pursue both. Usually the case is that you have to complete your studies and you have to graduate and then go on for your H1. But if you already have a degree, and if you get a job offer, and if it matches to your degree and it's a specialty occupation, then you're allowed to be on H1. There's no requirement for you to complete your studies. You can change your status at any point in time. Which also brings me to labor certification. If you get a job offer for whatever, if you get a job offer that is and the employer has gone through, the proper labor certification, and has obtained the labor certification, then you're allowed to work. You can quit your job, quit your school, and but I wouldn't suggest that you do that until you get your green card. There are other options like employment-based petitions, EB1, EB2, national interest waivers. This is especially true if you have a lot of research under your belt, a lot of papers, journals, articles printed, published, so that's also helpful. Okay? But as is the case with pretty much all of USCIS, there are lots of processing delays, so if you are thinking about something like that, you can come and talk to me, and we can guide you through the process. Just a quick note about owning a business. I've been asked this question a lot. Can you own a business as an F1 student? Yes, you can. Okay. Do you want to invest in a restaurant? Do you want to invest in a convenience store? Yes, you can. If you have the money, if you have the funds, you can do it. Okay, but you just can't work for it. Okay? You just can't get. You can own a business. You can reap all the profits, but you can't work for your business because that would be unauthorized employment. Okay. 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 So this is also the fun part. Okay. It's not fun. Okay. Don't get arrested for anything. Okay. Nothing. No DWIs. No drug issues. No nothing. Like do not run a red light. Don't do any of that. Okay. Because the consequences are very, very severe. Very severe. Okay. You could be placed in removal proceedings, which is the deportation proceedings. If you get arrested, as soon as you're done with your criminal stuff, ICE will be knocking at your door. There will be an ICE hold placed on you, which means that ICE would be ready to pick you up from one jail to another jail. Okay. That is not something that you want to do. There are lots of things that you don't want to do. There are lots of, no crimes whatsoever. But like if you were to pick and choose a crime, okay, don't do anything. That is an aggravated felony. That's considered an aggravated felony in immigration. That is considered something called a CIMT, which is a crime involving moral turpitude, okay? And we can talk about that, what that means and what that entails. But immigration has a very broad definition of what a conviction means, okay? If you are convicted in a criminal court, that might not mean the same thing as it means in an immigration court, okay? For immigration, all you need to do is admit. In so many words, in so many actions, all you need to do is admit, okay? An admission counts as a conviction, essentially, for immigration purposes, okay? So even if you don't get convicted, even if the case is dismissed, even if you get it expunged, okay, it can still come back and haunt you. So, and I just want to make a quick note about misrepresentation. Don't lie on anything that you send to the USCIS at all, ever. Okay? And that's it, because also misrepresentation is a very serious offense, and it's a permanent bar. If they do charge you with misrepresentation, you are always going to need what's called a waiver, okay? And you could be barred from coming in. Your visa could be denied. Your future prospects of anything could be in jeopardy if you misrepresent. So don't lie on anything that you send to the USCIS. Okay, and with that, any questions? Maybe one question. Yes? Yes.
Okay, it doesn't pertain to me, but did I hear you correctly when you said F1 students cannot work on campus the first year at all?
Yes.
Is that is that something new?
Could be. Oh, that reminds me. A lot of things are about to change. Why? Tell me why. Yes. Yes. Yes, a lot of things are about to change. So many of the things that I have said today might become obsolete because the regulations have changed. And there's a very good chance that it could happen because we know that it happened, and we know that it was extremely difficult for F1 students, people on H1. It was extremely difficult to get things done. You know, petitions were being denied for no reason. It was a very difficult 4 years, and it's coming back, and it's coming back with a vengeance. So yes, I mean, for the first, to answer your question, yes, for the first year, you're not allowed to work at all. Yes. So far we only know about the things that, you know, the president-elect has talked about in public. We don't know to what extent it's going to be implemented, but if the past is any indication, then there's going to be some sweeping changes in H-1B, probably also F1, and what you need to do in order to maintain your status. Or there's a thing called, it's called a cap gap, okay, where if you are selected for an H-1B after you graduate, and if you are selected for an H-1B, and the petition has been filed for you, but your start date is not going to be until October 1st, okay? But then your program ended, let's say in July, okay? That period of time where you end your OPT and before your H1 begins, if the petition has already been filed, that's the gap, right? It's more than 60 days, it's the more than 60-day grace period, but if the H1B petition has been filed, that gap is capped, so it's called a cap gap. Okay. That kind of went away. I mean, or it didn't go away in the sense that they, you know, but they were denying cases where there was a cap gap. Okay, so that's one example. Yeah, I mean, they really went after H1B petitions. A lot of petitions were being denied for really bogus reasons. They would say that, you know, an accounting is not a specialty occupation, which is ridiculous, because it is. Yeah, good.
Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you